Welcome to the Real Estate Secrets Podcast for healthcare professionals, hosted by Austin Hare and Nathan Palmer, who together have over 2 decades of real estate knowledge and investing.
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Austin Hare, and I'm here today with Dr. Matt Kathan. I'm sorry. Did I say that right? Is it Kathan?
It's Kathan.
Kathan, Dr. Matt Kathan. All right, it's good. It's a good thing we're not live. All right.
Word.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm here today with Dr. Matt Kathan. Dr. Matt is the co-founder of Timber Dental and the co-founder of Align Integrations. They opened their first location in 2014. Now they have 4 locations and 50 employees. And Dr. Matt, is it a pleasure to have you on the show today?
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, great. So I'm coming to you guys from Orlando, Florida, and you guys are in Portland right now, right?
Yeah, that's right. Our practices are in Portland, but I'm coming to you from Pacific City, Oregon, a small beach town on the coast.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. So, I am really curious. We were talking a little bit earlier about your story with your first location, the first practice that you opened. For everybody listening in, he was able to self-finance that, and it's a really interesting story. So why don't you tell us how you're able to do that?
Sure. So the first practice is started in 2014. I have to go back a little bit before that to really give you the background. So my wife is a dentist, and so am I. We went to the same school. We went to Creighton in Nebraska, and we wanted to claw our way back to the Pacific Northwest. So the only way that we saw that to be possible was to start off by working for corporations. So I worked for a company, a larger DSO, and really learned how they operated and how they did things. And I wasn't 100% pleased with the way things were happening. And my wife also worked for a different corporation. She felt the same thing. So we had dreams of starting our own practice. And in 2014, we did a scratch startup. We spent a considerable amount of time looking for practices to purchase, and just really couldn't find what we wanted, what really fit in with the patients that we thought that we could treat. So our first home that we purchased was a duplex, and we lived in one side and rented out the other side, and that helped to pay the entire mortgage and gave us a little bit of money. And we got into a emerging, changing neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, and we put a practice down the street. We put an offer in on this location to lease 2 times and were rejected 2 times before the 3rd restaurant failed. And they came back to us and said, "Hey, what do you guys think about coming in here as a dental practice?" And we were hugely successful at that location, and that gave us the opportunity to start another one. Molly and I had a dream to practice together, and we realized if we were practicing together, that meant that there were going to be no vacations together. So we decided that we'd start a second location. We started a second location that Molly worked at, and as we grew that, we learned over time that we really liked doing startups, and we really liked scouting new locations and enjoyed the business part of it. Decided to do another one. So we did our 3rd one, and then the ball started rolling, and at this point we don't practice any dentistry, and we manage the group. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we've done so far.
Okay, no, that's really cool. So you essentially, it sounds like your very first location that you opened, it took a while to get going before the landlord agreed to allow you to lease the space. So you got the duplex, you're renting it out to maybe, I guess, a little bit of positive cash flow or something like that. Are you what are you doing to sustain in the meantime? Were you still working at your corporate job, or what was going on there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we first started the first one, I would work at the location 7 to 7, 3 days a week. And then I had another job that I worked at that I commuted an hour and a half to. So I was working like 6 days a week at that point in time. And Molly had her full-time dentist job at the same time. So it was a lot of hustle. It's much different than how we are now. But we just spent a lot of time grinding hard to get
You know what? I think that's a rite of passage, right? Like we hear a lot about the 4-hour work week and Rich Dad Poor Dad and all these people, all these success stories. And it's great. I mean, but you don't just start there, you know, and it's really confusing to think like, yeah, I'm special or I'm smarter than everybody else. And I, you know, I'm going to start out with working less and making more. And like you do have to kind of spend some time going through those stages of the 12-hour days, you know, 6, sometimes 7 days a week before. And if you do it smart, you do it intelligently, you do it correctly, you do it frugally, then that can set you up for success in the future. So I think it sounds like you guys were, you know, in a good retail location. Was that strategic? Because back in 2014, I mean, we coach retailization all the time, and a lot of dentists do find themselves in office plazas. How did you know that you wanted to get in that like kind of prime location back then?
So we really looked at traffic counts, walkability scores, and visibility. We knew from being in corporate dentistry that they were very strategic about where they put their locations. And we were aggressive with communicating to landlords that we only wanted to be in the key spaces, on the corner spaces. We weren't going to be in inline spaces. And it took a while. Portland's community is really pre-COVID was really focused on the food market, and landlords were trying to create a certain experience for their tenants in mixed-use residential and commercial buildings, and a dentist didn't fit into what their vision was. So now that we have a little bit more traction, we can get into those retail spaces, but they definitely show us the inline space before they show us the corner space, even though we're willing to pay for it. That's for sure. Wow.
So how long did that take? You said 2 restaurants failed. What kind of time frame was that?
So for that first location, we were negotiating on other spaces at the time. It was about an 8-month period of time that 2 restaurants failed. The first restaurant failed. We looked at the space. Another one went in, and then by the time the third one went in, they came calling us.
Wow, three restaurant players. That is crazy. All right, so now how long were you guys operating that one before it became like essentially successful enough to make you guys want to go and open up your second location?
Sure, that took about 12 months. Within 12 months time, we hired our first associate, which was an epic fail. So there were a few epic fails with associates and leadership and learning.
What did you learn in that process?
Learning how to be a good leader. Once you move from that just working hard and I work harder than anybody else and put more hours, that doesn't translate to leading and motivating others and being available emotionally for other people to help them grow.
Definitely. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, 12 months is still really short. So I'm guessing you took a combination of your revenue from the duplex and the practice to put that into your second location?
Yeah, that's right. We didn't start self-financing. We self-financed the third practice. So we got bank loans for the majority of the first 2 practices. We were incredibly thrifty in the way we thought about the build outs and how we did it, what equipment we purchased. And we just kept thinking about what will the patient notice and what will the patient experience and what is something that I'm being sold by a dental manufacturer company or a contractor is something that it would be nice, but it doesn't improve that patient experience. And that's really what we were after.
No, okay. And I think that's actually something that's really relevant. So during that process, what have you learned that you can kind of skimp out on that won't affect the patient experience?
Sure. I think the first thing that was transitioning at the time was overhead lights on dental chairs. All the clinicians had lights on their loops to practice, and each one of those is about $1,200 per operatory. So now we have 40 operatories. So you can imagine that's substantial. Another thing is cabinetry. People spend a tremendous amount of money on cabinetry that they don't need to. The first practice, you talk about hustle. We built all IKEA cabinetry ourselves for that
Oh my
practice.
gosh. What do you
But
use
I
for
learned,
and overhead lights?
what's that?
What do you use to replace the lights?
So instead, we just have lights that go right onto our glasses.
Ah,
They're more direct. We try and keep all the arms away from the chair, the equipment away from the chair, try and put everything behind, so that patient experience is really clean when they walk in.
smart.
And TVs are on overhead projector mounts the above the patient, above the chair, linked back, so we can do descriptive exams, so they see all their X-rays and things like that.
Very cool. All right, cool. So use bank money for the second one. Now, what is going on? Like, I know you have multiple real estate investments personally. So like, what's going on in the background while you're working on your second and third locations?
So basically, from a personal finance standpoint, we're just being incredibly thrifty. We're driving. I was driving a van. We're driving 10-year-old cars. We're just being efficient with cash flow, and being focused on saving as much money as we can to reinvest. So as we purchased that second practice, we purchased another home in an emerging market that we knew was undervalued, that needed some work. So we were able to, at that point, we were cash flowing pretty well on the duplex as well. It was paying for our second mortgage at that point in time.
Wow.
Paying the first mortgage and the second mortgage. And then last February, we sold the duplex and now are looking to reinvest that we purchased another property that I'm at right now in Pacific City, and we're looking to reinvest the money from the duplex into another property. So we're going to divide our time between 2 to 3 different places and rent them out while we're away with Airbnb or Vacasa.
Okay. And how did you like get the idea, first of all, to live in a duplex or buy a duplex and rent it out? Did that come to you, or did you listen to like any podcasts or anything like that?
You know, the first job that I had as a dentist, the dentist mentor was like, "Hey, you should buy a duplex as your first house." And I was like, "Why? Like, why would I want to live next to somebody, you know?" And he's like, "Well, this worked for my friend, so you should try it." And then I looked into it, and it worked phenomenally well. So we owned it for 5 years, and for the first 3 years we lived in it, and the rents paid for it that entire time. So we lived mortgage free. And then once we moved out of it, it paid for our next mortgage, and we lived mortgage free again. So just a little bit of sacrifice to having a wall in between us. And it was a really nice duplex too. It was a nice home to live in.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of did the same thing when I first bought my house. It was 2011, but I got it for a great deal. It was right at the bottom of the market, and it ended up having like 4 bedrooms plus a guest house. And so it was a little bit different. I mean, I was single at the time, so I wasn't married. I didn't have to worry about that. But having 3 other roommates and a guest house person, but ended up being like, you know, you're getting paid to live there. Like it's by far outweighing the mortgage, right? So like, I mean, because like the market was just so recessed at the time. I mean, this is a 2-story house. It's on a lake in Orlando. It's like the master bedroom has overviews the pool and the hot tub, and it's got a big deck. And I was getting paid to live there, right? And so it's just one of those things you don't think about. And some people aren't willing to make the sacrifice, you know what I mean? And I get that, but it was never a permanent thing. You know, it was a sacrifice. It really wasn't that much of a sacrifice, but like having other people in my space, that part was, and just one of those things, if you're willing to do that for a period of time, like I think Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else, right? Like I agree with him on some things. I don't agree with him on some things, but that's one of the things that makes sense is like, you know, you just got to put in that hustle at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And at the time, I didn't feel like we were sacrificing anything.
Right. That's the funniest part. a lot of people are like, oh, I could never do that. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, really, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
So now, did you buy your second location existing, or was it de novo?
So we've done all de novos, and into the future, that's really our wheelhouse. I'm really attracted with acquisitions because of from a cash flow standpoint, but it's just not my lane right now.
Hmm.
I know de novos. I feel like I'm good at them. I can manage the culture in them. So that's where we're at right now. But we'll see what happens into the future.
All right. So you essentially have acquired 4 locations, started 4 locations, and then is it 3, I guess, residential real estate transactions?
Yeah. Three residential real estate transactions, and we're getting ready to make our 4th once we can identify it.
Okay, nice. And so how is that like right now? I know you said you're splitting your time between your 2 houses and you're working almost completely virtually. So how were you able to pivot into that situation?
Yeah, good question. So COVID in this regard was a huge blessing for us. The wheels were already in motion to move to a more remote lifestyle, but it just wasn't there yet. And there were some challenges with our meeting structure with Zoom and just getting people. COVID was such a great accelerator for people's understanding of technology.
Mm.
I remember right before COVID, in the beginning of March, trying to communicate to people how to turn on their cameras on Zoom, and how to log in at different offices when we were having meetings. And it was as if we were trying to go to the moon. And now, everybody's got their Zoom lights and their microphones and everybody's ready to go now. But that was just a really short period of time. I remember the first technology that I got to facilitate these meetings was this thing called a meeting owl. And it was this thing that would sit in front of our conference room. And we had 5 people that would be in one room, and then we'd have people remote at different locations. And it would go around, and it had a little camera that pivoted that went and looked at different people to try to get that. So we had started moving in that direction to be remote before COVID. And then when COVID hit, there was really a major need to have full team meetings and support during COVID for our, at the time we had 40 employees to support them through COVID. And we did that all on Zoom. And as we started, we just never left that remote attitude. So we have 3 people on our executive team are all remote, completely in different states. We have 1 person that's partially remote. And I don't think that's going to change. I think we'll be able to find the best people for some of these positions. And
So did you hire them after COVID? Have you brought on these people?
Good question. I brought on 2 people during COVID, 2 people on my executive team during COVID to help. I've also found a need to push the responsibility to the doctors as opposed to all the management relying on me. So we're offering doctor equity to 3 of our doctors this year, which has been incredibly helpful and transformational for our company to be able to give them that opportunity and to grow them in their leadership.
So I'm kind of interested in like the nuts and bolts a little bit of what it looked like transitioning to virtual. So like, I mean, are you guys using like any complex software? Are you using Google Sheets? What's your cadence? Is it every day, every week? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. It really depends. So we follow Traction, Gino Wickman's Traction model.
We are in the middle of implementing that as well, but we're not done.
Love it. Yeah, it'll change your world. So if you follow that model, you can do all of those meetings remote. Level 10 meetings, our implementer is remote. There you go.
Reading it right now.
That book has changed our business. We've been following the traction model, I think, for 3 years now.
Mm.
We tried to self-implement for about a year, and that did pretty good. And then we made the investment to get an implementer for the last 2 years. And that's been great. So we follow that model. It doesn't matter what model you follow, you just have to have a system. And that provides the meeting cadence for our team.
Okay. So essentially you're meeting, like, I guess, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and then you have different topics that you talk about. I think they're called rocks in that
Exactly.
method.
So each team has a level 10 meeting, which is a structured meeting. And then each member of each team has goals that they're trying to accomplish for the quarter called rocks. And the meeting cadence establishes accountability for people to ask if they need help, if they're on track, or if they're off track with their rocks. So it's really a support system and accountability system, so things get done. And if you think about all 50 employees having something that they're trying to accomplish by the end of the quarter, you can see how much gets done in a year or 2 years' time. And that's really accelerated the growth of our business.
And the rocks, are you allowing the employees or encouraging them to create their own rocks, or is it like a collaborative effort? How does that work?
It depends on the level of the employee. Definitely the executive team, they're creating their own rocks. Now, at the practice level, say you're a hygienist, your rock might be to increase your case acceptance by X percentage, or get more fluoride case acceptance, or something along that nature. So that was a major challenge that we ran into with this system not being set up for dentistry specifically. What do you do with those employees that really are technicians, more or less? How do you create goals and rocks for them?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so now it sounds like between the combination of being virtual and applying traction and all these things, you have set up a pretty good work-life balance.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, I do now, for absolutely. And it's kind of challenging for me to realize where I'm at and the fortune that I really have. I spend 3 solid days working on my primary business, Timber Dental. And then I have 1 day that I spend working on my side business. And I can live wherever I want to, and have established economic freedom. So I feel very fortunate in where I'm at right now.
That's great. When you're on the beach, are you surfing? Is that the draw out there?
I do. I don't spend as much time surfing as I do fishing. I have a dory boat that launches from the beach in through the surf and then back. So I have a vehicle that you launch the boat into the surf, turn it around, and run out. So fishing is kind of my major passion and pastime now. But if the surf gets bigger and I can't get my boat out, then I definitely surf.
That's cool. Yeah, because there's another dentist in the group, Dr. Peter Kelly. He's got a couple locations in Orlando. I don't know if you know him, which is where we're from. But then he lives in San Diego, and pretty much he lives there because he likes to surf. You know what I mean? It's like crazy sacrifice. I mean, he likes the culture, all that kind of stuff too. But I was curious if you guys shared that in common.
Yeah, Peter was texting me yesterday.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, small world. So, all right, you got your side gig, as you like to call it, Aligned Integrations. Tell us a little bit about that.
So when we came back from COVID-19, we were trying to think of what protocols we could use to keep people safe and get people back to work. The major challenge was getting hygienists to come back, because if you're a dentist and you remember back, hygienists just were scared to come back to work and didn't really want to be there, didn't want to use some of the aerosol reducing, aerosol increasing cleaning devices. So I was trying to find a solution to that problem. And we had been using mouthpieces by companies of Dry Shield and Isolite, but they were all sold out. We needed them for all our hygienists. We previously just needed them for the doctors, and all the hygienists want them. So there was a huge need. So I figured out a way to make them to fit into the mouthpieces, because the mouthpieces were available, but the other pieces weren't. And as I believe that dentists get charged too much for equipment on a daily basis, there's a huge markup. I thought that these could be made for much less. So whereas the manufactured device costs about $1,000 to $1,500, I could sell them for between $100 and $150.
That's crazy.
So the initial need was I just needed to start making these as fast as I could for myself. So I needed 20 of them. So I went to my engineering friend and got a design. And he said he worked for a big manufacturing company that manufactured parts for Freightliner. And he had a lot of connections in Portland, which is a pretty industrial city. And within 2 weeks, I had 200 of these things.
Wow.
I only wanted 20. So I had to figure out how to move them. So I reached out to all my friends that had larger dental groups than me and asked them if they were interested, and then, sold them all, and then had to figure out how to start selling these things on a website. So we got a Shopify website, and so now we've been selling them, and my engineering friend and co-founder is so excited about it that we're working on creating other devices, HEPA filtration systems and things.
So it sounds like the guys can get them for like a tenth of the cost of what the alternative would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, cool. And what's the website? I'll drop it in the show notes for everybody who's listening.
Cool. Yeah, it's alignedintegrations.com.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, yeah, man. So yeah, it's really interesting. I love how you've taken both residential real estate and combined that with the dental business, and move them along in tangents, because I think some people, you view your personal income as different than your business income, but I mean, they all really work together, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, especially at the beginning. And I think you really said it well when you talked about how it's the hustle that gets you there, but it's not the hustle that's going to get you to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. So true.
That baseline first, and then think differently. And I think it's hard. It was really hard for me to transition from I do everything and I do it the best to how can I help understand what other people are uniquely skilled at, and how can we work together?
So what's on the horizon? Like, what do you think is going to happen in the future of dentistry, and what's on the horizon for you personally?
So what I'm most excited about right now with dentistry is artificial technology as it relates to X-ray software. We're going to be able to implement an artificial technology software that will identify any of the common lesions and missed lesions. So what I see is one of the biggest challenges with dentistry and group dentistry is trust and communication. So what we run into in dentistry quite frequently is a situation where you have a patient coming in and they're new to your practice, and you diagnose treatment, and that treatment wasn't diagnosed by the previous dentist, or somebody comes in with a treatment plan and doesn't agree. So what I believe artificial technology is going to do is create a standard for us to base our diagnosis on, and ultimately deliver better care and give us a better ability to have oversight of what quality of treatment is happening in group practices and general practices overall. I know the insurance companies are going to soon have this technology, and we just need to up our game.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it'll be exciting. And are you guys planning to continue investing in real estate and open up more practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So since COVID, we've learned that being mostly remote is possible. So we are planning on purchasing another home in a different area of Oregon and extending to a new region. So we're seeking financing right now to add 2 to 4 practices in the next year, outside of the Portland region. So that's kind of what we're working on right now, but haven't identified anything yet.
Great.
I think it's going to be the great accelerator for those practices that are operating at a really high level. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for them. We know that our revenue is far exceeding what our expectations ever were.
Wow.
During the pandemic. So
into 2020, you guys think you'll end up having a stronger year than 2019 once everything's said and done?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, especially it's incredible to think about that when you look back after a 6-week shutdown. So yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah, well, 6-week shutdown, like completely. And then, but after that, it's not like you just flicked a switch and everything went back to normal. I mean, there was a long period of pain for a lot of people.
That's right. Yeah, for everyone.
Yeah, like you said, accelerated a lot of things that were in the pipeline, like forcing people how to work somewhat virtually, if not full-time, at least part-time. And, a lot of the low-hanging fruit got cut, like a lot of those businesses, unfortunately. I mean, if you weren't doing well in 2019 when the economy was really, really strong, it was very unlikely that you were going to make it through a downturn. And so it's very sad, honestly, but the only silver lining is the fact that there is opportunity now for those people who are able to weather the storm.
Yeah. And a lot of people are pivoting, and I encourage more people to look at this as an opportunity and look to where the opportunity is. They're definitely out there. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends don't see it that way. But I think we're proof that there still is opportunity out there if you have the right mindset for it.
That's great. Well, listen, it was great having you on the show. It was great learning about how you you're the architect of your life and your career and your business. And hopefully that people will listen and get some nuggets and some inspiration on how they can start to replicate some of those same things.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me share. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime in the future.
Sounds great. Thanks, Austin.